Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day 19 of the holiday card series. Today I'm going to be doing some painting using masking tape. I'm not going to be using any stamps for the images on this card. I will use a stamp for the greeting, and I'll tell you what stamp set that is when I get to it. But everything else on this card is all just freehand painting, and it's super simple and easy. I think just about anyone could do it. So I have some masking tape here. First, I taped down my watercolor piece to my board here. This watercolor paper is 5x7 pre-cut watercolor paper from Strathmore. And if you want links to this watercolor paper, it'll be down in the video description or in the supply section at my blog. And then I took some 1/4-inch masking tape. This is from 3M and Scotch, and I bought this particular size of masking tape on Amazon. It was kind of the only place I saw it available, and I was intrigued by the really thin, narrow size. And then I did a horizontal line and then created a bunch of tree shapes. So I didn't plan ahead for the sizes of the trees, I just went for it. And it's really random. I think as long as you kind of envision where the top of the tree is in the center and kind of get them like that, I think you're good with whatever you can do. I'm going to use some Winsor & Newton watercolor paints today. You could definitely use whatever watercolor medium you have on hand. This would be great with distress markers or distress ink or like a Ganze Tombi watercolor palette. You could even do this with watercolor pencils. I would recommend picking up the watercolor from the pencil with your brush instead of drawing on the watercolor paper. But what I've done is I just added water to 3 of those tree shapes, and now I'm dropping in color. I'm trying to not go over the areas more than once because I don't want to get the colors mixing too much and having it turn muddy. So I'm trying to just like step back and let it dry after I have the color on there. It's like a conscious effort because I want to go in and like mix the colors more, but don't do it. You just need to let the colors mix on their own, let the water do its job. I did have a couple spots where I kept going back in and messing with it, and thankfully I was able to like restrain myself and not keep adding more and more color because then it would have turned even more muddy. So I've almost got all those areas figured out. I've got all the colors dropped in. I did want to mention that I mixed those green paints before I started adding color onto all the trees. That just makes it easier so you can keep going. I hit the area with my heat tool to dry everything, and then it was time to peel up all those little bits of masking tape. So I started to peel these up, and the tape that was on the right side of my painting worked fantastic. I was able to peel it off without any problems. There was hardly any bleeding or seeping underneath the masking tape. It worked out great. You can see all those sharp edges. I love the sharp edges on this. It looks really, really neat. Now, when I started to peel up some of these stripes of tape on the left side of my piece, I noticed that there was some bleeding underneath or seeping of color. And I think that's just because I didn't press them down enough when I was prepping the whole area. So if you do this on your own at home, just make sure you really press down that masking tape to make sure that it really sticks down into all of the rough texture of the watercolor paper. To save my painting, because I didn't want to have to redo it all, I just took some white paint. This is actually some white gouache, but you could use some acrylic paints or anything that's opaque, and I just went over those areas. Now, in certain lighting, you can definitely tell that I've messed with the white background, but for the most part, it's not that big of a deal, and I'm the only one that knows. Well, me and nearly 200,000 of you, which, by the way, I can't believe I'm almost to 200,000 subscribers. It blows my mind. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. If you aren't a subscriber, please feel free to join the ranks. I just love you guys so much. So I took my black pen and I drew on some lines, just really random lines that look like little decoration, like boughs of decoration on the trees. Added some circles, and I did a little scallop on the second tree. The third tree I added dots and then just put a little star on top. The largest tree in the center, I thought it'd be fun to make it look like there were leaves on these little strings. So I'm just drawing little cat eye shapes or leaf shapes. On this second to last one, I made even smaller dots. And then on the very, very last one, I thought it'd be fun to kind of do a zigzag line. So it's just a little bit different. Just adding some lined elements here. So the stamp set I'm using for my greeting is from Paper Smooches. This is the Holiday Cheer stamp set. I'm going to use the one that says "Have yourself a Merry Little Christmas," but you could definitely, if you don't have a stamp for this, or like maybe you're new to card making, all you have are some paints and some tape and a marker, you could definitely write in your greeting. I think that would look fantastic, especially with kind of like the hand-drawn look that we've got going here. You could definitely just hand draw or write your message. So I wanted to show you guys this glitter paper I'm using. This is from American Crafts. It's from their 6x6 Christmas glitter pack. And I'm not going to use that striped paper in the background. I was thinking about it, but I decided not to. But for now, I thought I'd show you this watercolor piece. I have trimmed it down, but it's 7 inches wide and the paper is 6x6. So in order to get a 7-inch wide strip of this glitter paper, I'm putting it on diagonally, marking where those edges are, and then I trim down 2 7-inch strips. I'm going to have 2 triangles left over, which I can use for die cutting later. But for now, I'm going to use those glitter strips. The cardstock I'm using from the card base is some lipstick red cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I've cut 2 pieces. One is 5x7 and the other is 5x7.5. I'm taking the larger piece and scoring that at 1/2 inch from the top edge and then folding that down. I'm going to add some adhesive to that folded piece, that folded edge, the really thin, narrow folded edge, and then I'll be adhering these 2 pieces together to create a top folding 5x7 card. So I've added some Tombow Extreme adhesive, and then I'm lining those up and then pressing that tab down. This is going to create my top folding card, and this is kind of the only way you can make it out of regular 8.5x11 paper. So I put some adhesive on the back of that watercolor piece, and then I'm pressing it onto the glitter strip. This makes it a little bit easier so I'm not having to put adhesive on the top of that glitter strip. Some of the adhesive is kind of peeking out from the glitter on the back side of this, but I am eventually going to be adhering it with foam adhesive, so I'm not too worried about it. Speaking of, I put a bunch of foam adhesive on the back, and then I'm adhering this down onto my card. So technically it isn't a top folding card, it's a side folding card, but I really wanted that fold on the short end, and that's why I had to create my card base out of 2 pieces of cardstock. So I used a small heart punch from Punch Bunch out of that same red cardstock, and then I adhered that down with a little tiny bit of foam adhesive. Now, I thought I was going to have the card be done right then, but then I decided that I wanted more gold accents on the trees. So I took my Finetec metallic palette and painted on some of this metallic paint onto the areas on the trees. And I was going back to the palette over and over again, and then I realized that if I used a larger brush and had all of the paint on that brush, I could use that to pick up the paint with a smaller brush. And this is just the way I found that it was easiest to do. It kept the paint nice and thick, it wasn't too thin, and I was able to work fairly quickly working from that larger brush. So that's my big tip for the day, is to use a bigger brush to pick up paint if you're using a really small brush. Then took some Ranger Glossy Accents and coated that punched heart. And it looks a little bit foggy right now, a little bit whitened out. But as it dries, it will go completely clear. I took my black pen and just fixed some of those lines that were covered by the gold paint. And that finishes the card for today. Make sure you check out the finished images of this card to see how that heart looked without that kind of ghosty color on top. And this was actually a really simple card to make. I think I'd love to make a few more of these. In fact, I might. You'll want to check out my Instagram to see those. But thank you so much for watching. Today was day 19. On Wednesday, I'll be back with 20. Thank you so much for watching today's video. On screen are 6 cards from the previous years of the Holiday Card Series. They are all from day 19 going back to the year 2009. So if you want to check those out, you can click on them on screen right now. You can visit my blog at kwernerdesign.com, and if you click on that up in the top corner right now, it will take you directly to today's blog post where you can see some other thoughts on today's card, as well as the full supply list with links to stores where you can buy those supplies. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.